Vampires. Well, I think that everyone knows what a vampire is, right? They are blood-sucking corpses returned from the grave to feast on the blood of the living. Monsters forever damned to feed and depend upon the living. As long as we can remember, people have always spoken about undead demons that feed on human flesh and blood. Through the ages, the myth of the vampire has endured and followed us, and though there are many interpretations and versions of vampires, the essence of what they are and what they do stay the same to these days. The vampire has haunted the novels, movies, TV series, video games, clothing, lifestyle, and even breakfast cereal. Vampires in the world of darkness are both similar and different from the main culture folklore. Vampires in this world, or kindred as they commonly call themselves, are immortal, and while they can be killed, they do not age or die from natural causes. They don't need to eat human food and don't have human bodily needs. A vampire is clinically dead. His heart doesn't beat, his organs don't function, he doesn't breathe, his skin is cold and he doesn't age. But yet he thinks, walks, speaks, hunts and kills. To sustain this artificial immortality, a vampire must drink blood, preferably human, and while they cannot exist only on animal blood, they can drink it. Blood is an all-important thing for kindred, because it's not only an essence for their survival, it's also the source of their mystical powers. Vampires don't need to kill their prey in order to feed themselves, nor do they need to suck them dry. They don't need to extract blood only through the neck and don't need to use their fangs. The act of feeding or drinking blood is called the kiss in the kindred community, and the experience for the human prey is almost always pleasurable and can even become addictive. After the kiss, a vampire can lick the wound created by his fangs and the wound would heal itself, concealing the evidence of feeding. Humans who are bitten by vampires do not become vampires themselves, otherwise there would be too many vampires and too little humans to feed upon. The process of becoming a vampire is called the embrace, where a vampire drains the human of its blood and then returns some of its own back. It can be even performed on a dead human, providing that the blood is still warm. Once the blood is returned, the mortal awakens, and while he is actually dead, over the next few weeks his body undergoes a series of subtle changes and transformations. This period is often painful, suffering spasms and shock, as body and mind are fighting the fact that they're actually dead. A new vampire sense is honed to uncanny level, though one sense is the most dominant one: taste for blood. From the moment one becomes a vampire, he becomes a slave to the passion of his hunger, and every night from the embrace to eternity, he will experience a starvation and thirst that he cannot quench. The vampire who embraces a human is called his sire, and the new vampire is called his child or child. While the physical act of the embrace is easy, the eternal life is not given lightly. After all, another vampire is a potential competitor for food and power. To embrace a child, a vampire must often have a permission from older vampires. Being a sire is difficult and similar to being a parent. And like in the real world, not everyone is capable for it, because you can create a potentially dangerous monster. More often than not, many sires don't tutor their childs properly or even not at all. They hide their childs from other kindred in fear of their childs being seduced by the enemy, and their education is tainted by sires' jealousies and prejudices. Kindred society is full of schemes and power players, and many sires embrace childs for political reasons, but also for spite, envy, vengeance, but mostly out of loneliness or desire. Also, not everyone is ready to spend eternity in the night. Despite the powers brought by the embrace, a vampire is not entirely what he was as a mortal. As a vampire, a child is dead, a cold corpse incapable of truly feeling anything except the hunger. They turn to despair after they realize what they had lost with their mortality. Many cannot cope with the terrible world of the night and choose the final death, which is a kindred term for a death of a vampire. The most important lesson a newly embraced kindred learns is the hunt, or feeding. How they learn to feed is almost entirely dependent on their sire. Vampires feed many different ways, as best befits their personality. Some create herds of willing mortals who crave the ecstasy of the kiss. Some seduce and manipulate mortals, and some do it the old-fashioned way, by stalking, attacking, and sometimes even killing their prey. Vampires are first and foremost solitary predators. A kindred might go years and even decades without seeing another of its kind, preferring to hunt in solitude. However, the civilization of the undead is a manipulative and poisonous dance that leaves few vampires entirely untouched. Since the ancient knights, kindred have struggled for supremacy in a many-layered strife known as the jihad. Leaders, countries, nations, and armies have all been pawns in secret war, and vampiric conspiracies have influenced much of human history. Vampire elders command from the shadows, manipulating mortals and other vampires alike. Most fight and struggle in the battles and wars, not knowing for whom or for what they are truly fighting. The movement of jihad rarely leaves some kindred uninvolved. The Society of the Damned is structured as any mortal institution. Numerous offices, titles, and responsibilities circulate among the upper echelons of the kindred society. The following societal structure primarily applies to the sect known as the Camarilla. As the preservers of the ancient traditions of power, the Camarilla set standards of vampiric interaction. Vampires mostly live in the cities, because they offer abundance of sustenance and safety from the rural lands ruled by other supernaturals. In order to stay hidden from the mortals, even the gravest kindred conflicts must occur behind the veil of the masquerade, a code of silence that prevents kindred from revealing themselves to the humans around them. Camarilla is the upholder of the masquerade, and other vampires may adhere to their model or defiantly deviate from it, but they cannot simply ignore it. There are other kindred who follow different sects and customs, but we will talk about them later. Before we get into the depth of the Camarilla, we must first explain some titles and terms in order to better understand the kindred society. Kine is a word vampires use to describe mortals. Fledgling is a newborn vampire, still under the tutelage and protection of their sire. They are not considered full members of the kindred society and are often treated disrespectfully or as the sire's property. When the sire decides her child is ready, the fledgling may become a neonate, subject to the prince's approval. Neonates vary from newly released fledglings to indolent kindred of 100 years or more. Marked by the stigma of not yet having proved themselves to the elders, neonates are inexperienced vampires who might one night become something. Antilae. They are relatively young vampires who have proved themselves as valuable members of kindred society. Antilae are the lackeys to greater kindred, and if they are clever and cunning, tomorrow's elders, but for now they are still lacking the age and experience to become true masters of the jihad. Elders are kindred who have existed for hundreds of years, and typically range from 6th to 8th generation. The elder term is a bit subjective because a kindred who qualifies as an elder in the New World may be just another Ancilla in Europe or some other place in the world. Elders keep a stranglehold in the kindred power structure, preventing younger vampires from attaining positions of influence by exercising control they have maintained for decades or even centuries. Conclave is a policy-setting body that considers and determines future politics and emphasizes the Camarilla's role as guiding star of the masquerade and the relationships between Cainites and Kine. The prince is a vampire who holds domain over a city, codifying laws, keeping the peace, and maintaining the masquerade. The primogen is commonly the elder vampire who represents a certain clan among the political body of elders in the city. Primogen is a term that refers to individual members as well as the collective body. Most sheriffs are appointed by the prince and approved by the primogen. While the job description may vary from town to town, the sheriff's prime job is to be the prince's enforcer. the one who represents the muscle aspect of the ruling and maintaining order. The Senecal is the chamberlain or second in command and an advisor to the prince. At any time he may be asked to step in the prince's place if she leaves town, abdicates, or is slain. The Scourge. As the nights grow more violent and the cities fill with unknown kindred, some princes have resurrected this ancient position. Essentially, Scourge patrols the borders of princedom, seeking out and often destroying newcomers who have failed to present themselves to the prince. Now that we cleared some terms, we can continue. Vampires follow the rule of the strongest, i.e., only the strongest survive. Those who took action and seized control and had the strength to hold it would rule, and so it was. As time went on, traditions sprang up around this claim and control, and certain responsibilities were either tacitly or forcibly taken by those in power. The Camarilla set down and enforced those rules and ideals for centuries following the Renaissance. Through the years, Camarilla formally acknowledged the position of prince, the office that is still held by many vampires in these nights. A prince does not reign over a city. His role is more like that of an overseer or a magistrate than that of a monarch. He is the judge who settles disputes between kindred, ultimate authority on the traditions, and the keeper of peace. His biggest concern is the preservation of masquerade. Many princes rule in many different ways, and differently enforce their authority. The vampire denizens do not owe the prince any loyalty or oaths. Prince alone is not all that powerful, but the power that stands behind him makes other kindred think twice before trying to defy him or go against him in any kind of way. That power is mainly the Council of Elders, also known as the Primogen, who sanction and support the prince's rule. However, that is a double-edged blade, because if they consider the prince inadequate or unmanageable or even dangerous, his reign is going to be short-lived and fatal. Now, anyone can challenge the prince's rule and hold claim, but that is very dangerous and requires the backing of elders. And with or without it, it always ends bloody and fatally for many, and not to mention the potential breach of masquerade that could happen in those bloody conflicts. So the prince's position is a dangerous one and hard to maintain, and many don't want the responsibility, but it has its advantages. First, the prince also has a very big influence in the mortal business. The police, fire department, construction companies, hospitals, mayor's office, criminal underworld, and that makes him very dangerous, because he has power during the day. Also, he has the right to progeny, meaning that he can freely sire as many kindred as he wants without asking for permission. He has the protection of elders who will protect him as long as he maintains order and preserves the masquerade, mostly not caring how he does it. He has political power in kindred and mortal society and control over the domain and those who enter it. Tradition is that new kindred who enter the city or his domain must present themselves to the prince. If they, for whatever reason, fail to do that, the prince may punish them any way he deems fit. The prince controls feeding and may restrict or limit the feeding grounds of other vampires for any number of reasons, and disobeying these orders may be very dangerous. And lastly, by tradition, prince has the right to call a blood hunt against those who cross him too many times. The struggle between and among Prince Primogen and other kindred is by no means the sole component of the kindred's political game, but other aspects will be addressed as they come along. Like with any other society, in order to have security and stability, some laws need to be established. Within the kindred society, these laws are known as the Six Traditions. While from city to city they may be interpreted differently, they remain the basis of Camarilla's law. Some believe that these traditions were passed down from the beginning of kindred existence. Some believe that Cain brought them himself. Some, especially the younger vampires, believe that very old elders made them in order to control their children, and others believe that they are a set of common sense ideas that were upheld simply because they worked. Not every kindred follow and respect those traditions, but they risk final death by the hands of a prince who holds that domain. The official 6 traditions go as follows. The first tradition, the masquerade. Thou shalt not reveal thy true nature to those not of the blood. In doing so shall renounce thy claims of blood. These traditions have become the foundation of modern kindred society and the basis of the masquerade that hides vampires from the mortals. A breach of the masquerade is the most serious crime that a vampire can commit, and one of the easiest for a prince to fabricate if he wishes to punish an enemy. The second tradition, the domain. Thy domain is thy concern. All others owe thee respect while in it. None may challenge thy word in thy domain. Once, vampires staked claims to specific areas to use as hunting grounds, and they achieved that through bases of power and influence. This tradition was then used to enforce the idea of domain and to justify a killing of another vampire. As societies changed over the years, this became unacceptable. For the past 200 years, Camarilla has practiced that a city or region ruled by a prince was his domain. While the domain is not maintained only by prince for many different reasons, in theory, or to say officially, it is prince's domain alone. Many kindred claim some of the turf as their domain, and prince may or may not interfere, depending on his own interest and goals, but strictly speaking, none may claim or challenge prince's domain. The third tradition, the progeny. Thou shalt sire another only with permission of thine elder. If thou createst another without thine elder's leave, both thou and thy progeny shalt be slain. Most princes insist that they are the elders of this tradition's wording, and out of concern for overpopulation, Camarilla recognizes the prince's right to restrict creation. As fear of overpopulation and unknown kindred spies and enemies grows stronger, the conclave has resurrected the institution of the scourge. The fourth tradition, the accounting. Those thou create are thine old children. Until thy progeny shall be released, thou shalt command them in all things. Their sins are thine to endure. This tradition is pretty straightforward. A vampire that sires a child is responsible for it until it becomes a neonate. Because siring can be dangerous, a wise vampire considers the maturity and overall ability of a child to be. Also, a sire is responsible for teaching his child all of the 6 traditions and their meaning and consequences. When the sire deems his child ready, he officially introduces his progeny to the prince and ceremoniously reads his child the 6 traditions. After the approval of the prince, he becomes a neonate and is responsible for his own actions. The fifth tradition, hospitality. Honor one another's domain. When thou comest to a foreign city, thou shalt present thyself to the one who ruleth there. Without the word of acceptance thou art nothing. Simply put, a vampire traveling to a new city should present himself to the prince or other elder in charge of the city. The strictness of this tradition depends on the prince, but failing to present themselves, kindred take dangerous chances. That is where the scourge comes in, and more often than not, outcome is fatal. The sixth tradition, the destruction. Thou art forbidden to destroy another of your kind. The right of destruction belongeth only to thine elder, only the eldest among these shall call the blood hunt. This tradition is perhaps the most easily abused. Only a prince can call upon this tradition, and that gives him extra security in his authority. A kindred who transgresses this tradition is selected for destruction. Investigations of these crimes are swift and thorough, although the status of the victim has an impact on it. The only exception where a vampire ranked lower than an elder can receive sanctioning to kill another vampire is during a blood hunt. All in all, breaking the rules is fatal. Any vampire who violates the traditions and brings wrath of the elders on his head is hunted down and destroyed. The common name for this action is blood hunt, and all who hear it must participate and assist. Aiding and abetting is a sure ticket to call a blood hunt on oneself. A blood hunt is not an English fox hunt, which is what comes to mind to many young vampires. As always, masquerade must be preserved, and it doesn't even have to include vampires. A prince can send police, criminals, and even church-sponsored witch hunters through his influence in the mortal business. A bloodhunt usually applies for a city where it is issued, and if a hunted party escapes, he may live, although he can never return because when bloodhunt is called, it remains forever. If the crime is very severe, a bloodhunt can be expanded to other areas. And lastly, Elysium. Elysium is a place where violence is forbidden. Although many vampires consider this tradition useless, it is generally one of the most commonly respected Cainite institutions. A prince can declare parts of his domain as Elysium. Many kindred come here to fill the night with political debates or society events. However, it is mostly a playground for elders, and young members need to remember this fact. Most locations declared Elysium usually serve artistic or intellectual purposes, which means they are opera houses, museums, theaters, galleries, etc. The rules of Elysium are simple. No violence in Elysium. By threat of final death, it is forbidden to damage or destroy objects of art. The Elysium is a neutral ground. In the Elysium, masquerade must be upheld at all times. It is also considered bad manners to show at Elysium hungry, and Elysium grounds are restricted as feeding area. All of these rules of conduct mostly apply to the Camarilla, arguably the largest and the most prevalent sect, but not the only one. A sect is a group of vampires and clans that supposedly share a common ideology. Sects, as they are known in these nights, first surfaced after the Great Anarch Revolt, a continent-wide upheaval which took place in Europe during the 15th century. In the nights before the Great Anarch Revolt and the Inquisitions, elders claimed that there were no sects at all. Many vampires argued the legitimacy of these sects, but regardless, most vampires belonged to one sect or another. In this video, I will just briefly explain these sects because there will be a separate video for each one. Camarilla is the largest sect of vampires in existence. It was founded late at the close of medieval period, and its main objective is to preserve the Cain's traditions, especially the masquerade. It was founded as a sort of kindred UN to save the kindred from the Inquisition. The Camarilla is an open society, and it claims to accept any interested kindred, no matter what bloodline he hails from. But the grand majority of its members are still the 6 of the 7 founder clans: Bruja, Malkavian, Nosferatu, Toreador, Tremere, and Ventrue. The Gangrel, the 7th founding clan, left in 1999. Officially, the Camarilla does not recognize the existence of the Antediluvians or Cain. It reasons that these vampires, if they ever existed at all, have long since suffered the final death, and those who allude to them are publicly derided. The Sabbat. Rumored to have its origins in a medieval death cult, the Sabbat is greatly feared by kindred who do not belong to it. Sometimes referred to as the Black Hand, or as the sect members like to call themselves, Sword of Cain, Sabbat believes in the existence of their dark father Cain and antediluvians whom they consider to be a real and overwhelming threat to all kindred. Furthermore, Sabbat considers Camarilla to be a pawn of the Antediluvians, and they seek to overthrow the traditions and destroy the Camarilla. Sabbath is a malicious, violent, and monstrous sect that no longer clings to any trappings of the human philosophy and mortality. They revel in their vampiric unlives and consider mortals only fit for food and pastime. Outsiders know little about Sabbath, and some even doubt its existence. The only consistent rumor is that they are vicious and that they leave a bloody trail wherever they go. There are only 2 founding Sabbat clans, La Sombra and Zimitzi. Other members are assimilated by the Sabbat from other clans, and usually those representatives of other clans go by the epithet of anti-tribu. Anarchs, or rather Anarch movement, is not really a sect but more of a sect within a sect. While most Anarchs are still under the auspices of the Camarilla, they want a redistribution of power from the top of the kindred hierarchies down to the bottom. They want kindred society based on merit rather than age, embrace, and privilege. Even if they are a thorn in the Camarilla's politics, they are mostly tolerated, mainly because of the fact that they are not considered as much of a threat but rather just a nuisance. The Inkunnu are not a sect so much as a desperate group of like-minded vampires no longer wishing to be puppets of those older than them and tired of the incessant maneuverings of those younger than them. Inkunnu seem to have dropped out of the jihad altogether and they distance themselves from other vampires. Nobody really knows much about them, but it is rumored that they are of great age and potency. Many reportedly spend much time in torpor or otherwise sleeping. Some kindred linked the Inkunnu with antediluvians, others claim that all Inkunnu pursue or have attained Golconda, a fabled state of vampiric transcendence. Their agenda, if they even have one, is unknown. The independent clans claim membership to no sect. Instead, they follow the legendary tenets of their mythical founders. Independent clans tend to be the most cohesive and sociable kindred of all, as their clan duties ensure that they interact with other kindred frequently. In Elder Knights, the independent clans did not participate in the upheavals of the Inquisition and Anarchy Revolt, and as a result, they were rarely seen, and considered more legend than fact. That changed in the Modern Knights, and Camarilla and Sabbat find that their domains are crossed with independent kindred, beginning to realize that the four neutral clans have networks, concerns, and goals far greater than they have previously imagined. These four independent clans are Assamite, followers of Seth, Giovanni, and Ravnos. Lineage is important to kindred. Though they are loners by nature, the Damned placed great value in their heritage. Even a dull-witted kindred is afforded a modicum of respect if his legacy demands it. There are 13 known clans, each supposedly spawned by one of the antediluvians and each sharing common traits, characteristics, and weaknesses. The way they function varies from clan to clan. It is widely accepted that of the 13 clans, 7 claim membership in the Camarilla, 2 belong to the Sabbat, and the remaining 4 abstain from sects entirely. Because I will cover in detail all of the clans individually in separate videos, here I will just mention each clan and describe them in a way that they are stereotypically viewed. However, that doesn't mean that they are all like that. Quite the contrary, each kindred is an individual sharing only specific abilities that they inherited from their clan's bloodline. The Assamites are silent masters of assassination, killing for hire, and collecting blood for rituals to bring them closer to their progenitor. The Brujah were once philosopher kings of an ancient civilization, but now are rebels and rogues with a fearsome inclination towards frenzy. The followers of Seth venerate chthonic god while seeking out world's secret places and protecting ancient artifacts. The Gangrel are bestial and untamed, often coming to resemble the animals over which they demonstrate mastery. The Giovanni are an insular family of vampires who practice the art of commanding the dead while controlling the global finances, as they have since the Renaissance. The La Sombra are proud nobles who command the very essence of darkness and shadow, to the point of worshipping it, some say. The Malkavians are a clan fractured by madness, each member irrevocably suffering under the yoke of insanity. The Nosferatu are hideously disfigured by the embrace, so they keep to the surest shadows and traffic in secrets they collect. The Ravnos are nomads and tricksters who can force the mind to see what isn't there, though they are slaves to the vices they indulge in. The Toreador enjoy every sensual pleasure the world can offer, idolizing physical beauty and adoration of their thralls. The Tremere wield the supernatural power of their sorcerer's path, though they became vampires through treachery and artifice. The Zemiti are eldritch old-world lords who have little in common with the mortal world and can manipulate flesh and bone at a whim. The Ventru observe the noblesse oblique of vampire society, though their entitlement and greed encourages them to seek ever more at the expense of others. The caitiff have no inherent clan society support or even characteristics. They are like orphans among the great families of vampires. Before I finish this video, I just want to talk a little bit more about vampires in the World of Darkness. While most vampires cling to some aspect of their humanity, inside every one of them lurks an impassioned, hungry creature that is opposite to the man. It is the beast, and the beast knows only 3 activities: kill, eat, sleep. Though, like humans, they have the capability of overruling their baser instincts, sometimes they fail. When a vampire succumbs to the beast within, it enters in a frenzy-like state, giving into the darkest instincts of the vampiric nature. The frenzy can be induced by many things, but great rage, fear, or hunger are the most common provocations. The beast knows only to fight or flight, but it isn't a simple animal soul. It can be sophisticated and cunning, and it is a powerful monster, capable of many feats that a normal vampire would hardly achieve. Some vampires, especially ones that are in the Sabbath, seek not to prevent the beast, but to control it and use it to their advantage. However, if one is not careful and gives into the beast too many times, the beast will take over and stay forever. Aside from rage, hunger is the biggest cause, and it occurs when a vampire has very little or no blood in him. Blood, or vitae, is the source of vampire's powers. With vitae he can be stronger, faster, harder, he can heal itself and can use his special powers called disciplines. Without vitae, a vampire can give into the beast or go into torpor, a state of deep slumber. Vampires may enter torpor voluntarily in order to pass the time quicker and can sleep for centuries, waiting to awake in a different age. Of course, the most important thing, especially for us mortals, is how can a vampire be killed? In a way, a vampire can be killed just like any other human. The older a vampire is, the more powerful he is and more difficult it is to kill him. But if he sustains enough damage, he will perish. There are no special ways or rituals for killing a vampire, however, some things from the myths are true. Sunlight, of course, kills them, and the more older a vampire is, the quicker he will burn and die. Although there are some kindred out there who are powerful enough to endure short periods of time under the sun. Fire severely damages a vampire and can quickly end his immortal existence. Therefore, vampires greatly fear the fire, and even being close to a small fire can cause them to go into frenzy or giving into the beast. Beheading a vampire is also a sure way of killing them. A stake through the heart, while it doesn't kill him, it puts him into torpor. All in all, there are many different ways, especially when you know their weaknesses, but it is not an easy task, even when a vampire is a fledgling. Well, that's about it for now, and all you need to know in general about vampires in the World of Darkness universe. Next, on the vampire subject, I will talk about their history, myth and legends, so stay close. Please like, share and subscribe so that we can spread the darkness. But until then, don't fear the dark, but find power in it.